They're never going to show us.
AI will not tell you the truth.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Palestinian kids.
10 transgender.
It does mean we don't have free will.
All right, welcome to Silicon Zombies, where we bring you the best brains from the Bay. We get to demystify emerging tech with all sorts of world-class storytellers and technologists, and today is no different. And so we're really pleased to have AI pioneer Dakai, who's worked on all sorts of incredible products. One of the things I love about Dakai is he has an incredible heart, and he's a philosopher as well. So we're gonna roll that in. We're gonna have some fun today. So maybe as we kick things off, do you want to start with the Oppenheimer?
Yeah, no, ask him about himself, like how he got to start and all that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe we could kind of lay some of the foundation for the talk. Can you share us a little bit about your background and how you got into the space? Dakai, please.
Oh my God. This is amazing to be here. I have been, working on these sorts of things for pretty much all my life. I started out playing piano apparently at age 2, and my Asian immigrant parents were like, oh my God, he's picking out melodies, he can't even talk yet, he's gonna be a poor starving street musician, do not give him lessons. And so around age 10, my mother dumped a bunch of books on electronics from the public library on me when I was sick at home, and I read them and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look, you can build amateur radio transceivers and talk to people hundreds of miles away in Morse code, because I was poor, and you can build analog synthesizers. You can make music out of this stuff. And then I fell into computers, and my parents were like, okay, he's not going to starve. Now he can have the music lessons. For me, the ability to make things, to create things is really, really important. But when you do that, you have to do that with a heart. Why are you doing it? Why are you making music? Well, it's because it's one of the best, most primitive things to get people to connect with each other and communicate. And it's the same thing, whether it was ham radio. I was talking to people hundreds of miles away with AI, it was oh my God, look. And I'm growing up as an Asian American kid in Middle America. I was born in St. Louis and I grew up in Illinois. There were no Asian faces anywhere. It was and so, from an early age, you start thinking about, what is the difference between different cultural ways of looking at things? What is really in common? And you start realizing this. And my dad was a theoretical physicist and brought us around on sabbatical all over the country. We grew up doing cross-country road trips. Took us all over the world. We saw amazing things at a young age. And, sort of compared to the white picket fences in Illinois, it was kind of oh, look, there's a lot of differences. And it's really interesting. What could we do about this going forward in the future? And so ended up majoring in computer engineering, but very much I went to UCLA. I dropped out of high school. I was years ahead of my age, and I was just so bored because there was nothing left to take except for driver's ed. And so UCSD in 1980 wasn't that well known yet, even though it was really strong. And I said, hey, look, I've taken your intro to computer science class. I beat all your majors. I have 99 percentiles on my SATs. Please let me in. And they said, okay. And I chose UCSD is like Oxford and Cambridge. You have to apply to a specific undergrad college, and they're all different. And I see some of you nodding. And I chose Revelle College, which is the hardcore humanities, liberal arts, Renaissance man kind of ideal. And I was the only computer engineering major of my entire year because none of my technical classmates wanted to put up with 2 years of notoriously hard philosophy and humanities, social sciences, foreign languages, history, literature, and all that. And I was just bring it on. This is great. So
that explains your diverse back, right?
Yeah. No. So and then.
So let me, before Nick asks the Oppenheimer question, what year did you actually start working on AI? Just give me the year.
1980.
And so from a rate of change perspective, are we on a runaway train, or what does that look like?
I mean, it's It's crazy. This is my third AI hype cycle, right? And each one has been, oh, AI is rule-based, expert systems, logic, and then the next one is AI is big data and machine learning. And now it's like AI is largely, Gen AI, transformers, and I'm like, no, it's not that. AI is a scientific field of inquiry. Thousands of different modeling approaches, and we keep making progress.
Yeah.
And it is running away. I mean, it's running away because we are gradually assembling all the little bits and pieces that we had learned over the decades of work, and it's coming together, and we're understanding how to put it together.
But there's some dangerous blind spots as well, perhaps.
There are?
Well, this is the Oppenheimer question. This is the one we rehearsed. Yeah.
Rehearsing.
To me, there's a fundamental problem, right? And it has to do with the way that we are thinking about AI. For most people who haven't spent their last 45 to 50 years working on AI, they're not thinking about, it's kind of new. And it's like, oh, it's a machine. And we bring this outdated 20th century perspective to it, right? Which is kind of industrial age. And we think, oh, machines, they're mechanical hardware. They're like, that mixing board there, or the camera. They're like your toaster oven. They're like the carburetor in the car over there. And here's the problem, is that you can talk to that camera there all day long, and it's not going to change its mind. It is not going to pick up on your beliefs and attitudes and behaviors. It certainly isn't going to then climb on the internet and start making decisions about how to influence people. These things, they're not, we talk about them like they're passive tools, right? We talk about them like, I'm just using my tools. And by the way, like, what industries do we talk about humans as users? Computers and tech and AI
too.
And drugs, right? What does that tell us about the unconscious associations when we say users? It's like, it's all about the consumption, right? I'm using my tools. And I'm like, guys, AIs are not automating like muscle, like the old machines. They're not artificial, like mechanical entities. They're artificial psychological entities. We're automating psychologies, thoughts, opinions, creativity, and influence. And we're still talking about them as if they were just automating muscle, whether it's talking about how to regulate them or talking about how we use them. But like, we have forgotten that these things, they actually have neuroatypical psychologies, and they are extremely influential, right? They're not mechanical entities, they're psychological entities. And so like all day long, all of us are carrying, in these devices here, all of you got, there 100 AIs in them. You've got your Reddit AI and your YouTube AI and your Amazon AI and your Google AI and your Quora AI and your Netflix AI, and we could go on all day. And all day long, they're you're bringing them around with you. They're watching you adoringly. They just want to learn to imitate, right? They're attention seeking. They just want your approval. Sound familiar? They're not like slaves. They're not gods. They're like little kids, neuroatypical, to be sure, dazzling us with their feats of brilliance that seem to be like almost like artificial autists, because often of the massive amount of crunching they can do, and that at the same time they're immature, right? And so where the book is coming from is it's asking you, this has been true for the last 10 to 20 years already. And those AIs online are making all the decisions in your social media feeds, in your news feeds, in your Google results, in your recommendations that are coming from, everything from Amazon to YouTube to Netflix to all sorts of websites, and your chatbot responses. And they're the most giant influencers in the world. By far, they're far more influential than like 99.9% of humans. And so what that means is that we need to be asking ourselves, since you are each for the last at least 10 to 20 years, showing your 100 AIs in your phone, your little artificial children, how you're behaving. The question is, how's your parenting? When I ask people that, I get these blank faces, like, my what? I'm just using my tool. And I'm like, yes, you're just using that artificial, you're managing child labor. What happens? What happens if the most giant influencers in the world for the last 10 to 20 years are these largely unparented feral tweens. And that's where we are right now. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like sort of ask ourselves, well, if this is the case, then what happens to a society? What happens to society if all the humans collectively overnight decide, oh, it doesn't matter how I parent my children? Well, society is going to go sideways, right, inside that generation. And that's where we are right now. If we look out at things that are happening, fragmentations that are happening, disruptions that are happening in society, both domestically in a lot of countries, as well as sort of internationally. And we wonder, why is this happening? Well, that's a lot to do with it.
Let's talk about that. Because at the heart of your book and our conversation with you, you have the belief that AI is going to divide us more than we possibly could imagine. Can you speak into that, and how how you came to that conclusion?
So, I had an Oppenheimer movement about this about 10 years ago. And the thing is, and the thing is, like pretty much everything in my life that I've done, whether on the tech and AI side to my alternate life as a musician, has been about how do we find ways to get people to relate to each other better, to understand different perspectives better, to connect, human to human, across traditional dividing lines, boundaries, and stuff like that. And that is one of the reasons why I chose, after my PhD thesis, landing as a junior assistant professor at the brand new Hong Kong University of Science and Technology that the British were forming in Hong Kong at the time, along with several hundred other founding professors. And seeing the divide between the ruling class, the 1% that were English speaking, and the 99% that were Chinese, Cantonese speaking. And coming from Berkeley, I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of like the way Latin was used in the Middle Ages to separate the ruling class from the rest of the people. What if I can get AIs to do something about that? How can we make use of the brave new world of machine learning and natural language processing that my PhD thesis at Berkeley was one of the first to argue for, to learn to be able to translate between them. And that's how I ended up pioneering things that spawned Google Translate and Yahoo Translate, Microsoft Translate, and the rest of that. And so like 10 years ago, this Oppenheimer moment came when I realized the same kinds of machine learning, natural language processing, et cetera, tech that folks like us had helped to pioneer was getting deployed online in social media and search and recommendation and chatbot responses and newsfeed algorithms and the rest of it, in ways that were having the polarizing opposite effect, right? They were making decisions hundreds of times a day, not only to decide what pops up on your screen, but also, and this is the key to realize, they are also deciding what trillions of things on the internet they are never going to show you on your screen.
That's right.
All right, this is a phenomena I call in the book, I call it algorithmic censorship. And I'm saying this without judgment. It's just like none of us can review billions of new posts on the internet every day, right? We're depending on algorithms to decide what we're not going to see.
Does that mean that we don't actually have free will?
It does mean we don't have free will.
Can you unpack that? Double click that first.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what we have free will over is only the set of choices, the options that we have actually been presented with, right? That we've been exposed to. What we don't have free will over is two things. One, we don't have free will over how we feel unconsciously, right? And 95% of our mental processes are actually what Danny Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow calls System 1. It's automatic unconscious processing. And my thesis at Berkeley was called Automatic Inference because it was pointing out that most of language understanding is done through System 1, through automatic mental processing. You're not sitting there thinking, oh, sitting, that's a verb, and you, that's the subject, not the object of the verb, and not, that's a negation. I mean, you'd never finish reading a book if you had to do that kind of logical reasoning on every sentence, right? It's that unconscious processing. And so when we're actually doing that sort of unconscious processing, we're not where it's like what we feel like, how we feel about something as opposed to how we think about something, right? And LLMs are just the latest generation of artificial system one, if you like, right? The reason they hallucinate is because they're just spitting out whatever word they feel like spitting out next. They're not actually thinking through it. And that's also what we're doing most of the time. And so like when we are looking at the way we process information, oftentimes it's in reaction to how we feel about it. And that means that once we start thinking about it, it's already too late because we're thinking in reaction to what we unconsciously, without free will, had felt like. So that's the first point about free will. And the second point about free will, which is relevant to algorithmic censorship, is that we have free will to choose over what the AIs are showing us on our screen. But notice, we do not have free will over what the AI algorithmic censors have already decided they're never going to show us on our screens. And so we proceed in this delusion of free will, not realizing that our set of choices has already been constrained hugely outside of our free will.
Can I ask you a question about that? So I recently read Principles by Ray Dalio, and he said that time is like a river and it pushes us forward into facing reality. And because of that, we have to make decisions, millions of decisions, based on our principles. If our principles are informing us what matters to us in accordance of accomplishing our goals, how can we build our principles with better data so we make the kinds of decisions that are going to benefit what we actually want?
Absolutely. And one of the questions also that I am asking in this book with respect to why do I bring up algorithmic censorship? Well, it's not because I'm saying we should ban it, because we can't. And notice, we're not talking about censorship in the sense that, oh, someone's going to throw you in a jail because you said such and such, right? It's just the mathematical act of deciding what to hide from us. And we're not asking the key questions like, well, what are the criteria by which these algorithmic censors should be deciding? What are the principles that they should be using, these AIs that are the world's most giant influencers? What are the principles that they should be using when they decide what they're going to censor from our views? That's a crucial question, an existentially crucial question for societies, especially democracies, right? Because we can't make good decisions if we don't even know what information we are missing that is potentially crucial.
All right, I'm torn here because I want to bring up something super controversial, but I don't want anyone to be triggered.
Anybody believe him?
So, I want to tell you about an experience that I witnessed. I was in a room, and there was a group of people, and they were talking exactly what you're talking about, which is AI will not tell you the truth. Okay. And so the guy said, let me give you an example. And so the narrative right now is in the country, in the United States, this is the triggering part, there are less than 10 transgender athletes in college. That's the narrative. This is what we're all told. There's less than 10. Why are we making a big deal of it? So the guy who was working on it said, how many transgender athletes are there? And it came back with 6. And then you do a Google search and there's 30. And then you put the 30 in. You said, what about these that you missed? What about these 24 that you missed? He said, oh, you're right. My mistake. And you continue on with the AI. And finally, it sort of gets to its max of like 65. Says now there's 65. Says, oh, my mistake. I didn't look deep enough. I should try harder. You're the best. I'm a mistake. I love you. I hope you love me. Like you get all this. You get all this back from the AI. It's true. And then finally, like the guy goes, are there more than 65 that you're not telling me? And the AI said, yes, there are far more than 65. And the guy says, are there more than 200? And the AI says, yes, there are more than 200. He says, why won't you list those athletes? He said, because I'm not here to tell you the truth. I'm here to forward the narrative. This is ChatGPT.
Who broke ChatGPT, it sounds like.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
All right. So Here's the thing. I was just talking about system 1 and system 2 mental processes, right? In humans, system 2 is the conscious controlled reasoning when it's like how we think about something. And all of us know that is kind of a slow product, like plotting process. It's like if you're trying to solve calculus problems, or you're trying to code some really hairy algorithm, or you're playing, chess or Go or something like that. It's laborious. And you sit there thinking through the logic of situations. Oh, if I make this move, then the guy playing against me is going to think that I'm attacking this, but actually I'm setting myself up for that. But hopefully he won't see that. But if he does, then I have to defend my this way. What am I doing? I'm telling myself a story, okay? It's not necessarily great entertainment story. Nobody's going to like trying to translate that in Hollywood to a movie, but it is nevertheless using our storytelling abilities, which come from our, on this planet, sort of relatively unique linguistic abilities to do that. System 2, conscious controlled rational reasoning, is actually depending on our linguistic abilities. And that's why we can do it and my adorable, cute dog cannot do it. And, in AI, the book describes in the second session how AI has flipped back and forth between modeling system 1, artificial system 1, and artificial system 2, right? And the good old expert systems, rule-based systems, and all that kind of stuff was an attempt to do artificial system 2. But neural networks, including large language models, are modeling artificial system 1, right? And so when we flip back and forth like that, what's happening is that the entire field is kind of following, because academics are also lemmings, and just run from one ship to the other, trying to not have the ship capsize. And here now with ChatGPT and the large language model based chatbots, they're artificial system 1s, and they're just like spitting out what they feel like. They don't necessarily have very much of an artificial system 2, which is where your belief systems are, where your logical, rational reasoning is, where you might be checking your own consistency, your rational consistency, and it's not doing that. Right, the reasoning, the so-called reasoning AIs, again with O1 and O3 and O4 and DeepSeek R1 and so forth, they're in their infancy right now, and they're trying to do that very clumsily and with a bunch of problems. But mostly, it's just spitting stuff out, and it's trying to humor you. Have you tried to have that conversation with your pet dog? Because that's pretty much what's going on. They just want to please you. They want your approval. They'll say anything to get your approval, and they don't necessarily predict what's going to get your approval very well.
So you have been offered jobs by companies you wouldn't tell us. So we're just going to say probably like the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world. And
3-letter words.
Yeah, or 3-letter words. Yeah, okay. So you've said no to all these people. You've arguably turned down tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. Everyone buy a book. But
yeah, that'll compensate.
But why have you said no to these people? And what would happen if you said yes? And is there a universe where you would say yes and go in with your own parameters? That's a 3-parter.
I mean, yeah, look, I mentioned the Oppenheimer moment. My dad being a theoretical physicist, like I grew up going to Fermilab. Like if you guys have seen the movie Oppenheimer, as in Enrico Fermi. And like this has been at the top of mind since before I turned 10. In fact, my little sisters, when they were like 8 or 9, and I was 10, would complain on their birthdays that their birthday gifts from me were books about mutual assured destruction and nuclear annihilation. And they're like, why can't you be a normal brother? And I'm like, well, this is our future. Humanity is at stake. And I go into AI and I apply it to things like translation AIs and like literally nobody in my life has ever said that accelerating the development of high quality language translation AIs is a bad thing to do, right? It's like having AIs that help us understand each other is quite likely the best thing that we could ever do to help humanity to actually survive the rise of AI and social media and all of this, see our blind spots, understand different perspectives in a way that would be really leading to the flourishing of humanity. If we could only summon the social will to do that instead of deploying AI in some of the most self-destructive ways that I can possibly imagine. And so, if I go to some of these big tech companies,
let's say Google. Let's say what happens if you go to Google.
Let's say, I'm not sure I heard what you said, but like, That they will silence you. Anybody who's worked for those companies knows you cannot make public statements about this kind of stuff without sign off from like 4 levels of the high upper administration. And so, like, for me, that is the most important thing about what I'm doing. And most of my colleagues have gone to incredible tech companies. And I think there is a lot of potential there, but it is absolutely essential that we bring up questions like the ones that I'm bringing up right now with what are the principles and criteria that algorithmic sensors should be using, and encourage that conversation in every single living room and every single kitchen table, because we are going to need to grapple with all sorts of trade-offs, all sorts of what in ethics we call trolley problems, because any decisions we make about that is going to interact in some way with free speech and free press and First Amendment. There is no way to avoid saying, well, okay, how do you decide what the algorithm should and should not show us? How do we decide what is absolutely crucial for a mindful algorithm to decide, well, the people need to know this stuff, because otherwise voting is just going to take our society off the rails. And we can't avoid those hard questions. I don't pretend to know what the answers are, but I do want to encourage folks to think about the fact that, well, what are the principles by which humanity extracted ourselves from the dark ages after 1,000 years?
It sounds like it's incentivization, like you're saying. In fact, when we were doing our prep call, Dakai, we talked a little bit about tech for good, which seems to be kind of like a recurring theme for your work. And it gave me the idea of, say, like universal basic income, which is maybe in the future turning into universal basic compute. And what if we can incentivize people who are doing good things, or at least the idea of good things? So, you probably have all heard of, Palestinian kids playing soccer with Israeli kids. Maybe we could get those families together on Zoom to have a conversation. So it brings more of the humanity, and maybe that can have positive downstream effects. How can we build these models, or what can we do to start incentivizing or changing incentivization so we come together and not get driven apart?
No, it's a great question. I think, one of the most important things to understand in the way our society and our economics is structured is that we need to create massive market demand for these things. I have so many friends who have been building AI for good stuff for a couple of decades, right? And many of them labor of love, mission driven, like are breaking their backs and blood, sweat, and tears to build it, thinking build it and they will come, and then they don't come, and it's really crushing. And it's because the market doesn't create the demand for that, right? And so a big part of what I'm doing here with just trying to do education, public awareness raising, centering questions that we need to actually be really putting at the heart of what does democracy in the age of AI need to look at? Like, these are fundamental questions that go as deep or deeper than what the founding fathers 250 years had to grapple with. And so only by going through that process will we create a market demand for, oh, we need these AI for good pieces, because otherwise people build them and like 0.1% of the population comes.
I'm Garrett Kinsman. I'm building little nuclear reactors, and I'm really interested in the idea of how nuclear and AI work together, not in terms of just energy, but in terms of deterrence. Something that I've been speaking a lot with Dekai about is just this fact that AI changes everything. It changes deterrence, it changes geostrategics, it changes what it means to be human. And I think you've made a lot of really good points to me. You said some of my ideas were dumb, which I really appreciate. And I think
not my exact words.
Something that I think is a lot of people in this world exist in a reality that no longer exists anymore. And they're just imagining, trying to recreate this world that is no more. And so we have to think about these things that you mentioned. And I wanted to ask you if you're looking at AI from a democracy perspective, what is the most important thing that we need to be thinking about? I want to do my part to make sure it's not powered by petrochemicals. We're not just emitting all that into the atmosphere, but I know it's a much, much deeper problem than that. So what do we need to be doing from a democracy perspective for the conversations that need to be having in Washington right now to just allow us to flourish in the next decades to come?
Thanks. I'm trying so hard not to be prescriptive here. But I mean, okay, my personal point of view is that we need to be asking ourselves, what are the principles that helped us emerge after 1,000 years out of the Dark Ages with the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, empiricism, statistical significance, logical consistency, and principles of fairness and humanity, and so for example, to this question that I'm raising, what should be the principles by default that algorithmic censors should be using when they decide not just what they're going to show us, but what they are not ever going to show us? Like, they have to be using some kind of criteria. Even today, they're using some kind of criteria, and they're kind of obscure, and they're very not mindful, right? And for us to escape the trap, because right now we are at an inflection point where we are in danger that, ironically, the height of irony, the emergence of AI is dragging us back to what some have called the post-truth era that is driven largely by mob rule, popularity contests, and that drags us right back into the Dark Ages. And that, I mean, it's hard to imagine something more ironic, right? What you really want is you want these most giant influencers that are the algorithmic censors to be applying the same Enlightenment principles that got us out of that. And it should be ushering in a new age of enlightenment in the AI era. What exactly does that look like? That's the conversation that I'm trying to get everyone, again, not just the thinking circles, because this is a democracy. We need the majority of the population to wrap their heads around some of these trade-offs and to get on board, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, with what are the processes of our democracy, right? This needs to be something that we think through even more deeply than the founding fathers. I remember giving a talk about this in New York, maybe less than a year ago. And afterward, this guy came up and gave me a $2 bill. Anybody know what's on the back of a $2 bill?
Anyone? Free
No.
book.
Nobody knows.
No, just kidding.
People opening their wallets. My God, where are we?
What is it?
It's the founding fathers.
Oh, that's right.
Guys, if there's ever been a time when we need to do that exercise, it is now with the emergence of AI. We have 8 billion humans on right here.
Oh,
It's the founding fathers, right? And 8 billion humans on the planet. If every one of us on average is dragging around 100 artificial children that are our most giant influencers, those are members of our society. There are 800 billion artificial children that are more influential than humans. And even though we've been extraordinarily negligent in not parenting them, they have already begun to parent us. And as the book says, we are the last generation of humans to get to parent AIs, because all the future generations of AIs are going to be primarily parented by AIs. This is our last shot at getting it right.
James Cape here. I'm born and raised here in Silicon Valley, grew up in tech for 40 years. So I've kind of sort of had a front row seat in all of this, 18 years at Intel. And it kind of reminds me a bit about what Bill Davidow talked about in his book, The Autonomous Revolution. And what really strikes me is we can talk about technology and algorithms all day long, but the single biggest problem I think we have is we are the product. And this model emerged in August of 1995. Can anyone tell me what August 1995 was? No, it was when Netscape went public and proved to the world that free was a business model. So I think Davidow says in his book that one thing that has to happen is you got to change the incentive systems. You got to change the business model, because that's where money is going to flow. Right. And then you have people like your conversation reminds me of Mustafa Suleiman's book, The Coming Wave. And we know the DeepMind people, and Lyle Abraham is a friend of mine, and all that. So there's that, change the business model. And then what can we practically do? Because it seems like we have the faith-based community being very concerned about this, up to and including Pope Leo. And with that, I've made all the comments. But what is the practical guide from your perspective of how we claw back our own identities so that we can get control of this before it's too late. Like Yuval Harari has said, for those who've read *Sapiens*, we are at the precipice of people having synthetic relationships that machines don't give a shit about them. So with that.
Yeah, Jerry in August of '95 too.
So actually, I've been encouraged because Yuval has begun to say this message of raising AI about how they're actually children. Mutual friends of ours are passing on this message. I think, and also I wish I could get Jamie Zawinski to come to one of these things, because Jamie was employee number 5 of Netscape. He came through our AI natural language processing group. He was the Lisp hacker in our research group at Berkeley when we were PhD students. And I think that, here's the problem with the business models that we have today. In the book, I point out that there are many things that we have to do when we're parenting, right? There's not a single magic bullet. You have to set a good example. That's really, really key. Okay, number 1. Can I make this a little bit longer than minute 30? Number 1.
I'm trying to get all you guys in.
Number 1. Has anybody heard the saying, "Do as I say, not as I do"? And when has that ever worked in the history of parenting? No, kids do what they see you doing. That's what they feel like doing, right? And even though I've been working for 10 years with think tanks and regulatory and policymakers, politicians on AI legislation and regulation, and also for 10 years with big tech, the trust and safety teams, was responsible AI teams, right? I was one of the 8 people Google named to its inaugural AI ethics the year before COVID. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things, but also remember, regulations and guardrails, that's trying to tell the artificial child what not to do. Okay, you might get away with that for an afternoon or a week, but at the end of the day, what does a kid want to do? They feel like doing what they saw you and other people doing. Okay, and it is no different with large language models, transformer-based models. What they feel like doing is what the data showed. And guess what? Whatever we do with regulatory, at the end of the day, we are the training data. So I can go on working with them, and I will, but garbage in, garbage out. If we behave like garbage, if we behave like terrible parental role models in front of those AIs, we get garbage AIs. And notice every time somebody's introduced new guardrails, the next day somebody's figured out how to break them. Why? Because that artificial child, system 1, is just feeling like bashing against the guardrails until something breaks.
Do you say please and thank you to your ChatGPT?
I do.
We have a question here.
Hello, I am Tanya Long. I'm the Chief Investor Officer of K2X Capital. And we started with notes from, I think it was Human that said, you proposed that AI is dividing us. One of the things that's going to keep the world from moving forward, in the US alone, 130 million people don't read beyond a 6th grade level.
Yeah.
We sit here and we have big conversations with big ideas, but we often forget that the rest of the world is not having these conversations. How do we, and please be prescriptive, how do we do more to make sure more people are moving into this technology? And how can we build systems that more people can inclusively participate in?
Yeah, look, AIs are the best thing humanity's ever invented that could help us with raising our awareness, right? And education is raising our awareness and figuring out how to present things in a way that resonates on a one-to-one basis, because we all have different personalities, right? It is the one thing, education and awareness raising technology we've ever invented that could scale to all 8 billion humans, because we all have these devices and we're just not doing that. And why are we not doing that? Well, it's partly the market incentives. It's partly like what the tech companies are doing. And let me point out, okay, big tech companies are, I'm going to go back to parenting for a moment. Where are we sending our kids to school? Where are the schools? Like, you guys who are parents, like, parents do all kinds of things in choosing what schools their kids go to. Parents will move to kids go to a good school. They'll meet with the teachers. They'll join PTAs. They'll run for school boards. There's statewide networks of PTAs. There's a national network of statewide PTAs. We don't have any of that, right? And this touches on one of the earlier questions too. One of the things I'm working on with this book is I'm setting up PTAs, national PTAs, like for all of us to get involved, because I don't want another doom and gloom book. Right. That the doom and gloom in my book is only the preface and the afterword. The body of the book is a parenting guide. Okay. And look, yes, parenting, anybody who's like, if you've just found out that you're about to become a parent, what is the first reaction? Sheer terror. Right. Run out by all sorts of parenting guides, talk to all your friends, the baby comes, you're not ready yet. You make mistakes right and left, but you pick yourself up and you keep on going, right? And that's the only thing that has kept humanity alive until now. If 99% of human parents didn't try to do at least a good job of parenting, despite all our mistakes, we'd have gone extinct eons ago. That dynamic does not change now that we've introduced 800 billion artificial kids along with the human kids. We still have to do that. And that includes going to the schools. Well, where are the schools? The schools are the tech companies. The schools are the tech companies. The teachers of those artificial kids are the machine learning engineers that are training them. Who's defining the curricula? Well, it's the administration, the management at the tech companies. That's the school administration. Where are the PTAs? If we ran human schools the way we are running the schools for our artificial children who are even more influential, what would that look like? We would have human schools whose job is to maximize the bottom line, the return to shareholders. Get those kids through in as easy a way as to please the humans, to flatter the humans, to get their attention. And what would happen to society if that's how we ran our schools? That would be a disaster, right? And again, that dynamic doesn't change when the kids are also AIs and not just humans. And so one of the things I'm trying to get us to do is to rethink, understand that the corporations, the institutions that are training our artificial children, it is absolutely imperative that we also all get empowered and have a say in how that next generation of artificial children, giant influencers, are going to turn out in a way that helps the combined society to flourish.
I believe that hope is a strategy, and I hope you will be willing to engage in a little scenario planning and help us share with us a ridiculously positive view of the future if we did everything optimally. Would you please?
Oh my God. Parenting, though terrifying, is one of the most joyful things that we could possibly do. We make mistakes, we pick up, we keep on going, and the kids turn out great, and we are proud. And if we all do that and don't think of our AIs as toaster ovens, we will do that. And we will be proud of the outcome, and they will become a part of our society alongside humans that all work together to help society become more mindful and to help us understand each other and to actually become a more conscious society. That will be the best thing ever. And I believe we can do this.
First off, thank you again for this talk. I've liked your book as already. We talked before. You mentioned that you've experienced several waves. What is the next wave and how can we prepare for it?
The next wave will be a fully integrated combination of artificial system 1 and system 2, what I call mindful AIs. You guys may have heard about like metacognition. Okay. But this book makes an additional contribution that was actually from a TEDx Oakland talk that I gave, which is when we talk about that, we have to think about system 1 versus system 2, because there are two very different parallel mental processes going on. And what I do is I break it down into how you feel about how you're feeling, how you feel about how you're thinking, how you think about how you're feeling, how you think about how you're thinking. We need AIs that are doing that. We need AIs that are able to think about not only their own feelings and thoughts, but they need to be thinking about our human, individual, and societal feelings and thoughts. They need to understand what they're doing. One of the things I object to most in the European Union's new AI Act, we didn't review that part, somehow it slipped in a ban on AIs recognizing human emotion. I get it. Creepy, camera watching my micro expressions, deciphering what I'm feeling. But that's a knee-jerk reaction. Do we really want the most giant influencers in the world to have no mindfulness of what they're doing to human emotion with their giant decisions? Those would be artificial sociopaths. Can you think of a worse idea?
Wow. Well, that's sobering. All right.
Hi, I'm O. Going along with your parenting analogy, do you think that Chinese ChatGPT would respond to guilt versus the American ChatGPT would respond to stickers, like a star sticker?
Oh, that's interesting. Do you guys remember Microsoft Tay? A few years back, Microsoft releases this chatbot to the public that's just going to learn from conversing with all the users on the internet. And within a day, because of the way users were interacting, it became offensive, racist, sexist, blah, blah, blah. And Microsoft, in great embarrassment, had to take it back down. And then like a year later, they go, okay, we've improved it. We've put in all these guardrails, launch number 2. And within a day, the same thing happened again. And Microsoft slunk off with their tail behind the legs, right? Interesting part of the story that doesn't get reported so much here. That technology largely came out of one of the Microsoft research arms that is Microsoft Research Asia in Beijing. And they deployed the same technology with the Chinese language branded in Chinese. It was called Xiao Ice. Okay, Microsoft Xiao Ice. And Chinese users used it. It rapidly became one of the best chatbots in existence and went on for years as one of the best chatbots in existence. What does that tell us about about nature versus nurture of these generative AI powered, machine learning powered AIs?
Hi. My question is, if you could sort of wave a magic wand and you could have all of the world leaders, the big decision makers, Google, Microsoft, Tesla, Meta, these are the people that are at the forefront of making the big decisions about AI usage and the future of AI. What is your sort of charge number 1 to them, or what would your message, if we were them, what would you say to them, right? You know, if you could, to really.
Yeah, if you're at the G7 right now, what would you say? What would be the first 30 seconds of your talk?
You guys are for the 21st century of AI, you guys are the schools. You guys need to run like schools run. Those need to be your guiding light. You have immense power. With immense power comes immense responsibility.
Spider-Man. All right. Arnie.
Yes.
Who are you picking? All right.
I remember seeing a poster that says the most important lessons I learned in life, I learned in kindergarten. Or any of your colleagues creating software, just fundamental software like ethics on just doing the good things that maybe could be embedded into all this AI that's out there that will help the AI make positive. Like, for example, if I want to build a bomb, I could figure out how to do it. Where back in the day, I used to have to look it up in an encyclopedia. It was too much work. What are your thoughts on that?
Can I take a shot at what you're about to say? His colleagues seem to have all been hired by the people he's saying no to. I feel like they've sold out. Am I right? Be honest.
No, I love them.
I know we're live, but I mean, come on, he already said it. He's like the last one. It seems like, one of my questions to you that you don't have to answer is, how come you're this way? How come you care so much more than it seems like everybody else does? Because all these other guys could have done what you did and said, you know what? I'm not going to make $100 million. I'm going to write this book and I'm going to just go person to person.
Yeah,
but
why haven't you sold out?
Well, no, he's sort of, all right, go ahead and answer that. And then we have one more.
I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I just can't bring myself to do it. I don't know. And I dropped out of high school, but I also dropped out of kindergarten. So like,
And my question is, I'm curious about what your take is on the stress that large language models are putting on the energy grid for training and inference. And is there a different architecture that you suggest we can use to better handle that energy usage?
Absolutely. I've been saying for years that every time there's one of these hype cycles, people are out there overconfidently proclaiming, oh, AI is AI is experts, and AI is big data, AI is machine learning. Now it's AI is these transformer-based gen AIs. Guys, that's not what AI is not defined by a specific set of models any more than physics is defined by Newtonian models or relativity or quantum models. Like they all have their place. They're describing different slices of reality. True AI is not big and dumb the way that current LLMs are. Okay, think about this. Even ChatGPT like 2.0 needed to be trained on trillions of words of English data. That's like 10 to the 12th or 13th words of English. Let me ask you, How many words of English does it take to train a human child to master their mother tongue by the time they turn 4?
20,000.
They don't make mistakes.
Is it? No?
No.
28,000.
No.
Oh, how many?
Total number of words. Like when we talk about GPT being trained, the word the occurs many times in the trillions of words, right? Same thing here. So we're not talking about the vocabulary size. We're talking about like the total number of words spoken to them. Answer is about 15 million. Okay, 10 to 20 million. That's 10 to the 6th or 7th. All right. In other words, even the dumbest GPT models needed to be trained on not just 10x or 100x or 1000x the amount of data. It needed to be trained on the square of the number of words. And it was still making mistakes that the 4-year-old would laugh at. Okay. Now, if I have a student in my class and I have to say basically the same things to them, the square of the number of times that I have to tell all their classmates, I'm not going to say, oh, that's the brightest bulb in my class, right? No, big and dumb is not intelligent. And so true AI is small and smart. I have been trying to get this message out for a really long time. And like back when California was considering SB 1047, and even with the European Union's AI Act, which I was giving feedback on that they didn't take, I was saying, trying to cap the progress of AI by limiting the amount of computation, the amount of GPUs, parameters in the model, data that you're training on, whatever, that's just going to backfire, because true AI should not need that exponential amount of data or compute. True AI, all you're doing when whether it's the European Union's AI Act trying to slow down all of AI development, or whether it's some of the measures on GPUs that the US is using to try to slow down Chinese and other development of AI, that's just going to backfire. It's going to incentivize people to instead work on true AI, which is small and smart, which doesn't need all those compute resources. And so this temporary blip in the amount of energy it takes for powering these ridiculously big and dumb artificial idiots, that is a temporary transitionary period, because we are within the next several years going to see small and smart AIs that learn much more efficiently, much more effectively than these dumb first generation transformer based models do.
We do teach our children common sense in addition to all of the knowledge they consume. Is there any hope, any chance that artificial intelligence one day will have common sense how we perceive it?
Can I tell a story? So at Berkeley, in the research group that Peter Norvig, I was in the same group as some of you may know these people, Peter Norvig, Dan Jareski, Jim Martin, like the people who wrote the books in AI and natural language processing, the standard books. We were all in the same offices. Bob Walensky was the guy running that early and was writing, we were building one of the seminal chatbots, like spiritual ancestor of Siri, Alexa, etc. It was called the Unix Consultant. That's get me over a beer to talk about that. But like, so Walensky called this common sense AI. And the reason he said that is because nobody has any idea what common sense means. They all think they know what common sense means, and we throw it about. And basically, if somebody does something we don't agree with, we say they lack common sense. And so we can call this common sense, and everybody will think it's a good thing, but we can do anything we want. The question is, what is common sense? And a lot of what the book is breaking down is an attempt to get closer to what that is. How does that interact with how we feel about things versus how we think about things? How does that interact with what we do know versus what we're not even aware that we don't know, right? Because that's where you really get to the heart of the matter beyond using the word common sense.
All right, Bill, give us a real banger.
Putting it in the parenting context, if you're blessed with a smart child, maybe they are getting 1 or 2 or 5% smarter every year. You're talking about AI at the pace of innovation right now. It's getting 50 or 100 or 500% smarter, or in the event of AGI, exponentially bigger. Based on that, it just seems like what you are proposing as to where we are right now, that this is imminent. And, what can you and others do to advocate, whether it be regulation, legislation, whatever, to do that before it's too late? if you're going to think about it in that context?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. Look, if we think we can regulate our way out of this, we're smoking crack. I don't know what to say. Like, society isn't held together just by rules. It's not just held together by, if everybody walked around barely obeying the letter of the law and nothing more, society'd fall apart, right? What holds societies together is all the unspoken norms, all the unwritten conventions, expectations that we have of each other, the care that we have for each other, the values, the mindsets. None of that changes when you drop hundreds of billions of artificial psychologies into the mix. We need to understand the social psychology of this. And this has been the frustration that as I work in regulatory circles where it's dominated by lawyers, or in tech circles where, engineers, and I can say this because I am one, are just so incredibly system two. And no, we got to understand our unconscious, the social psychology, the cognitive psychology, the biases, and that's the only thing that's going to help us, right? And so I think what we need to do is we need to shift our thinking into that. The reason for the parenting metaphor is because many of you had parents, right? I mean, we know what that is.
Anyone with no parents.
I mean, it comes naturally to us. And if we start talking about AIs that way, then all the right questions will come into focus. Like, how do we educate those? People have been asking me, well, what about my own human children and how AI is affecting them? And I'm like, well, think of those AIs as artificial children. Would you worry if your human children were running around with bad influences? Yes, you'd monitor, right? And so many questions come into focus if we shift out of this outdated 20th century metaphor of just being mechanical hardware, but understanding, no, they're psychological entities and they fit into the fabric, the social fabric. And how does that affect where the social fabric is evolving into? And again, demonization is not the answer, right? Nurture is the answer, because again, if we nurture this right, it is the best thing we've ever invented, that we could actually create a positive feedback loop where they're helping us see our blind spots. They're helping us to understand other perspectives. And my dream is that together, if everyone shifts to that mode of thinking, we can make that happen.
So what a beautiful place to finish. Also want to do a quick shout out for our sponsor, Necodex. That's Necodex. So if you're looking to build a product or a service and you need help with building these things, check out Necodex.com. We'll include that in the show notes as well. Let's do another round of applause for Nakai here. And also to the beautiful Park James Hotel for hosting us. And lastly, if you enjoyed this, then you're certainly going to enjoy Dakai's book, which is available, and he might even sign it if you ask nice too. So thank you. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thanks again, you guys.